I'm certain that the purpose was because when I was in that pod, um, I was with other prisoners who we're the ones who formed what was known as the Pelican Bay Shoe Short Corridor Collective, which was a prisoner class human rights movement seeking to expose the torture of long-term decades housed in SHU. And you know, it was well known that I was one of the main catalysts for the creation of that group, and all the writings that were put out in public describing our complaints, and in order to educate the public and other prisoners about what's really been going on in this California system in these SHU units for close to 30 years. And so that was an opportunity for IGI and probably the administration to separate me from the other main representatives in this coalition. Number one, the cell that they put me in D4 when they first put me over there in September of 2012 had a Lexan covering, which is a plexiglass covering over the entire front of the cell. And that makes it a lot harder to communicate even with other prisoners or staff in the pod. It restricts airflow. It's either real super hot or real cold. And it's a lot more isolation and sensory deprivation. And then through at that time we were having monthly meetings with the administration here. At the time it was Associate Warden P.T. Smith. He was in charge of SHU, and we had complained about the Lexan covering on these cells because of various factors that I just touched on. And so in December of 2012, he had the Lexan covers removed from the F pods almost throughout the entire D facility of SHU because of those complaints. And you know, recently, just like on October 31st, that Lexan was placed back on the front of our F pod cells. But in response to your question, you know, this disrupted my ability to work with and communicate with the other main representatives involved in our collective prisoner human rights movement. And that was the purpose. See, what happened was there was four of us who, well, there was the guys in our pod in D1. We all talked and we came up with, decided to create this collective, right? The group of us there, and then there was other people in the pod next door, right? Who we could talk to through by putting our ear up against the yard door, right? The yard door joins the two yards. Mm-hmm. Okay, and we're the ones, and then the four of us from different races or geographic areas of the state of California, we volunteered to become the four main representatives of this short corridor collective. As far as I know, it's like I said, communication's been disrupted, but as far as I know, the main representatives are myself, Franco, Arturo Castellanos, and Sitawa Dewberry. It's pretty small. I mean, I've never measured it. I've read stuff where it described it as like 80 square feet and like 8-foot high walls. You know, you have the two cement bunks. You have a cement desk area and a cement stool area. You have a combination stainless steel sink toilet thing, and you have three walls, and then the front of the cell is metal with perforated holes. And like I was saying, on my cell, it's got that whole area is covered with Lexan now. You have a fluorescent light, and you have the vent. You know, that's pretty much the cell right there. Yeah, they have a designated area that you can put stuff on the wall, right? At the foot of your bed, that area of the cement, right? But since we filed this class action lawsuit, as it's kind of gained traction, you know, I put stuff on more areas of that same wall, and nobody said anything about it, right? Maybe May, June. You know, it'd been a while, and I was like, and when I got at him in like, let me see, April. When I got at him in April with that birthday card, I sent him a picture too, because my niece, she'd sent me a photo of her and her kids and her boyfriend, and he's never met them or anything. And I figured, well, for his birthday, he'd like to see one of his grandkids and great grandkids. And he, according to him, he never got hurt, never received that. And this is an issue. I mean, if you think about it, I've been in SHU now for 28.3 years, and you know, that's not enough being kept in a cell 24 hours a day. You have these things going on with the mail on a fairly regular, ongoing basis. You know, I don't know if you could imagine it, having never experienced that, of you know, the psychological, the mental stress and emotions that might cause you to feel when you have these family members and friends that are your only line to the outside world, and they're being stressed out, and you're being stressed out, and frustrated and angry, and you're looking at these guards coming to your cell, and your mail's being played with, and you don't know who it is. You know, it's over time, it's a pretty serious issue. You know, things where your mail gets handed to somebody else on the tier. You know, all these kind of things are problems. It's all part of the process of you know, tormenting prisoners and breaking them down. In my view, it's all intended to coerce a person to become a state informant through the debriefing process. You know, the prison system is just, you know, you probably know, but just to hear it from me, a prison system is a microcosm of society. Okay? In society, you have drama, you have politics, you have crime, you have across the board. Prison system is a microcosm of that. But you have, the difference is you have a bunch of convicted felons, right, who a majority of which come from the working class poor communities, had a hard life, probably involved in drugs, right? And you have them all grouped up. A lot of them grew up from little kids, maybe through their whole families, their grandfathers, fathers, mothers, cousins, all in street gangs. They were brought up in that environment from the time they were little kids, right? And then they're put in this prison, right, where they don't have they're stuck. Out in society, if you have a problem with somebody or there's, you have a choice. You can distance yourself from it. In prison, you can't. Well, you can if you go to the guards and say, hey, you need to protect me or get me out of here, but if you do that, they own your ass for the rest of your life, and you're going to have a hard road to go if you go that way, right? So naturally, there's going to be conflict, right? That's just human nature. That's why I don't, as far as politics, disruption, I mean, it depends. And what is this guy? What evidence do you have, right? Because a guy is labeled as a gang member, does that mean that if something happens with the group that he's involved with on that line, he should automatically be snatched up off that main line and put in a cell, in a box, for 24/7 for decades? No. I think there's a lot better, more humane, smarter ways of dealing with even the most. Say you have a documented history of a prisoner who could be viewed as a vicious, predatory prisoner, right? Is it right to put that guy, because he did things 30 years ago, right, in a box for 30 years, right? No. There's other ways to deal with it. Other countries have proven that there is more humane, smarter ways of dealing with. You take that guy who knows what the circumstances were to what he might have done, right? Say he killed some cops, some guards, right? Who knows what them guards were doing? Say those guards were trying to set him up to be murdered by other prisoners for whatever reason. And he said, you know what? You want to have me murdered by these other prisoners? I'm going to murder you. How's that? Right? And then you take that guy and you put him in a box and you treat him like he's some kind of subhuman animal for 30 years. You know what? You think that's making that person better? You think that's making everybody safer? Right? This is still a human being. In our society was based on, it was originated on, we believe that human beings can be redeemed. They're redeemable. Our system of incarceration was created to punish a prisoner and correct him or make him a better person than when he went in there. Well, I've been in SHU for 30 years, and I've been denied due process. Hey, yeah, that whole process from top to bottom is a sham, It's an expansion of that police state agenda. It's a terrible terrible policy. We've been opposed to it ever since they came out with it in their prototype proposal in March of 2012. We submitted a detailed opposition and alternative policy, and it's a bad policy. It's vague. It's open to abuse, and I believe that if and when the global attention and heat that has been placed on the CDCR system due to our peaceful activism efforts was ever to fade and go away, that we'd probably end up with tens of thousands of CDCR prisoners locked up, warehoused in cells, doing a 4-year to life SHU term under this step-down program. Well, you know, being as how I'm not affiliated, right? I'm not a member I'm not a member of any gang. I never have been. You know, as far as association, if you call association being housed around other people who they also had labeled as associates or members of gangs, and me interacting with them, conversating with them, assisting them with legal issues that they might have, if that's association, I guess I'm associated. But as far as being associated in any illegal gang activities, no. So I've been in the SHU already for 28.3 years. You know, I haven't had well, they gave me a 12-month SHU term for my alleged leadership role in the 2013 hunger strike, right? Before that, I hadn't had a SHUable offense since probably 92, 93, around there, right? You know, they don't have anything on me other than what people who torture victims. That's what I call these debriefers. They're torture victims who were so desperate and broke down. They were broke down by the conditions that were subjected to such an extent that everything that was ever contrary to all of their beliefs and the way they lived their whole life up to that point, it just destroyed that. And they went crawling on their stomachs to these gang unit investigators and wanted to lick on their boots and say, please get me out of here, I can't take it anymore, right? You know, other than that, they don't have nothing on me. Their allegations, they're unsupported allegations, right? Because if they did, right, this is where a due process issue comes in. If they did, if they had actual evidence that supported what these debriefers were saying, CDCR's own rules and regulations mandate. It's not discretionary. The term is shall, and the definition of terms in the Title 15, shall is mandatory. And in Title 15, Section 3312 through 3315, it says very specifically, if any staff member believes a prisoner has violated a serious rule or regulation, and it defines serious, right? A serious rule or including a felony offense, right? Shall issue a CDC 115 rule violation report. That applies to all staff. I don't care if you're IGI. I don't care if you're the litigation person. if she observes a prisoner she believes has violated a rule, that's mandatory. It's not discretionary, right? This is also in the DOM, the Department Operations Manual, under the gang policy, where it says these gang unit staff are to, study, observe, surveil, and any type of activity that is illegal, they are to fully punish that person to the fullest extent of all available means, including rule violations, restrictions on privileges, referral to prosecution to the DA. But what it actually says is that they submit their reports. Like, say they got a debriefing report, right? And this debriefer is saying, hey, Todd Ashker, I saw him on the specialty. I never met him before in my life, but I know who he is. I heard of him. I know that he's this and that. And while we were on the bus, we were in the cell, in the cage next to each other, and we had a conversation. And he told me this guy in my pod had to be killed, right? And they say, oh, IGI goes and they say, well, we need to corroborate this, right? We want to corroborate it, right? That's in their own rules and regulations, right? So they say, okay, let's look at the logbook. Oh yeah, Ashker and this guy were on the specialty clinic bus this day. That's corroboration, right? So they say this is reliable, right? That's a crime. Conspiracy to commit murder is a crime. That's a felony. That mandates a write-up and referral to the district attorney's office for prosecution. And they're to take that information and give it to the administrator in charge, which would assume be, it says in there, I would assume it would be the associate warden or the warden. And then the warden is responsible, or the associate warden, whoever, for doing what is supposed to be done with that information, right? That hasn't happened. I've never been issued a rule violation for a single allegation based on confidential informant. That 1987 case, there's no mention in the rule violation report of any confidential information, gang, that it's a gang, anything, period, right? I have never been issued a rule. Man, every time I go up, I've seen my confidential file. It's probably like 18 inches thick, right? And hey, not one single time have I ever received a formal rule violation charge which would open the door for me to have other due process, right? A hearing, a possible staff assistant, investigative employee, ability to possibly call witnesses, nothing. And they're telling me if I want the care, Sue Reisenhoover was a family nurse practitioner under Sayers, guidance or whatever, and she is responsible for my medical care at this time. She tells me straight out, this is by 2008 or so, I'm 602 and I'm in constant, chronic, severe pain. I'm lucky if I get 1 to 3 hours of sleep a night for, I'm talking months, years, right? I got all kinds of expert orthopedic specialists, doctors, all saying this is a permanent injury, it's never going to change. Surgery should be the last. I got nerve damage. Surgery should be the last resort because even a minor trauma, he could lose the arm due to the severity of the prior injuries. So Medicaid, how do we deal with this? Pain medication, physical therapy, supportive arm brace. You know, that was it. You know, this is a specialist. Sayer, no, I'm begging these people, please. I can't sleep. I'm in pain. I can't function day to day. Hoover, I go down to be interviewed for her on a 602 in 2008, and I tell her, hey, Hoover, look, man, I provided them with copies of these specialist reports. I said, hey, Hoover, look, what is going on here? I said, man, I've been coming down here repeatedly telling you that I'm suffering, I'm in severe chronic pain, I can't sleep. I've provided you with my copies of these specialist reports, and what is going on? I don't understand it. And she mumbles to me under her breath, come on now, Mr. Ashker, you know what's going on. You know, you hold the keys. You hold the keys to get out of SHU anytime you want. Well, I mean, it's been forced upon me since I've been in the SHU, right? And it's worse now. I mean, hey, especially, you know, with all these informant stuff, saying conversations on the yard and all this stuff. Hey, man, you know what? There's times when it goes back and forth. I'll go through stages where all this stuff will be coming out and people will be making these allegations, and I might not go to the yard for a month, 2 months, or longer. I might go once a week for an hour for months, right? Because it doesn't give any opportunities for somebody to make up something, right? So that's what I've been doing right now for about the last 3 or 4 weeks, right? And same way with the law library. I quit. I don't even go to the law library anymore because of the same thing, you know. You know, I've been basically forced to withdraw from being any type of normal social human being through my incarceration in the SHU. Well, I mean, you know, when you ask me that question right there, I mean, you're entitled to ask whatever question you want, right? But it's kind of disrespectful because I'm pretty sure, based on my testimony here, if you're not familiar with it, you know, prior to this, is I've had severe problems obtaining medical care for at least more than 24 years since I was shot and permanently crippled up and subject to chronic pain, and I have repeatedly practically begged for medical care for 24 plus years and repeatedly been denied and had to file lawsuits. I mean, I don't know if you've ever suffered from chronic, serious pain, but if you could, it's not even describable to somebody who hasn't experienced it to where you'd ever really be able to get it, of being locked in a cell totally reliant on prison officials, medical staff, to give you care and treatment for your serious pain and problems, and be denied, be called a liar, be disparaged against, be not given nothing, and just suffering in that cell. I mean, mentally, I mean, It's impossible to put into words. That's where I put in that one part about my anger and a sense of continuous silently screaming, right? I'm not talking about screaming like, oh, I'm talking about if you could put every emotion of the human spirit, of hopelessness, pain, agony, hatred, all these emotions in frustration, while you're locked in this cage treated like some animal, right? Because even an animal, most people wouldn't even treat an animal like that. An animal who was suffering pain, they would take him to the vet and do something for him. Because in medical, a physical medical ailment, right? That doesn't carry the same stigma as mental. Because in a physical ailment, you can see it, it's observable, it's testable most of the time, right? They have clinical studies and things that they can verify. In a mental, it's often unobservable, and it just carries a stigma, not only in prison. Our society has a stigma against of people who seek mental health. Our military has puts a stigma on service members who have mental health problems. It's looked at as a weakness. This person is not a strong person. This is a weak person. Their mind is weak. And that's and in prison, you don't want to have that stigma on you. These guys on these sensitive needs yards or these psych unit, EEOP, which is, I don't know what that stands for, but it's a psych unit. Those guys on those yards, hey man, most of them they can't ever go back to a regular general population once they have that on their jacket that they're a nut job, man. But the stigma in my own mind of that would like I told you, I don't care if I was hearing voices, if I was seeing visions. I wouldn't go to mental health and say, hey, what can you do for me? And they call me, you going for this psych referral? I told them, no, get out of here, right? And me and him, hey, he did that a couple of times where he documented, when I told him, I said, look, I'm going to tell you real respectfully, do not say nothing to me, don't talk to me, don't ask me nothing. You go by my cell, don't say nothing. I don't have nothing to say to you, And then he put me up for another psych referral because of that, saying I was hostile, I was delusional. He listed all kinds of stuff on there, right? And so then I'm refusing. He put another referral in. So then I'm in the shower one day. I come out of the shower and I go up to the front of the pod, and he's like off to the side, and he springs up in front of the pod door. He goes, Mr. Ashker, could I talk to you? I told him, hey man, I said, how many times I got to tell you, you don't say nothing to me. All this bullshit, this game you're trying to play of putting a psych jacket on me, and this is in front of everybody in the whole pod, right? And after that, I notified my attorneys of this harassment and this guy trying to fabricate a psych jacket on me, all of a sudden. I mean, what more could damage my credibility? I'm a litigator. I've been litigating and challenging prison conditions for more than 25 years on several successful cases that have affected the whole CDC and the nation, right? I'm a lead plaintiff in this major class action attacking this jewel of the nation on long-term solitary confinement. And what more would damage my credibility than to have some kind of, this guy's a delusional nut? But I believe in my mind, right, that it's possible that my vision problems are a result of years of not having, long-range vision, like things to focus on long range. It's all closely confined in a small box for 28 plus years, right? And probably I think just being in that cell in that concrete box is hard on the body. I mean, we're a biological living thing, and we're subjected to this hard concrete for years. I mean, I'm sure it has an effect on your joints and who knows what, man.